Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing ankle-deep in brown winter mud beneath the walls of a medieval town where cold stone rises above you like the side of some sleeping beast. River mist curls around the ditch. Torchlight trembles beneath the gatehouse arch, and every breath from the waiting horses hangs pale in the air. Your boots are wet. Your cloak smells faintly of smoke and damp wool, and somewhere beyond the walls a bell marks the fading light. Straw clings to the road, wood smoke settles beneath the rafters of nearby sheds, and a cartwheel complains with every slow turn. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here without developing a powerful appreciation for dry socks, hot pottage, and doors that actually close. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, comment where you're listening from and what time it is there tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight beneath your damp cloak as the line before the town gate inches forward. A merchant argues quietly over the evening toll. Two pilgrims wearing small pewter badges of St. James wait behind a mule whose patience appears even thinner than theirs. A woman carrying a basket of onions pulls her shawl tighter around her face, while a guard in a padded coat peers suspiciously at everyone as though the entire countryside has personally conspired to make him work late. The gate should already be closing. Winter darkness arrives quickly, and a town does not casually leave its oak doors open after sunset. The iron keys hanging from the gatekeeper's belt are nearly the size of your hand, and the doors themselves are thick enough to make you wonder whether they are meant to keep enemies outside or townspeople from reconsidering their housing arrangements. Above you, a pair of watchmen walk the timber gallery. One carries a lantern. The other carries a spear, and looks so tired that the spear seems to be supporting him. Then you notice the servant boy. Not really a boy, perhaps 17 or 18, old enough to know better, and young enough to consider that fact irrelevant. He crouches beside a pile of empty baskets near a stable wall, whispering to another household servant whose red wool cap keeps slipping over one eye. Between them lies a fur cloak, a battered antler, and something that looks suspiciously like a carved wooden mask. You do not know them. You have no reason to care. And yet there is a particular expression shared by people about to make an extremely poor decision, recognizable in every century. The first servant pulls the fur over his shoulders. The second ties the antler to the hood. Apparently, the plan is simple. A merchant's groom is expected to come through the gate shortly, and the servants intend to leap from the shadows, pretending to be some forest demon. People in this world possess no shortage of creatures to fear. Some swear wild men live beyond cultivated fields, shaggy beings said to lurk among ancient trees. Others tell of spirits wandering crossroads after dark. Priests may discourage certain older beliefs, but travelers still touch charms, whisper saints, names, and avoid lonely places where something unpleasant is rumored to have happened. No one can quite agree whether anyone truly believes every tale. That does not stop anyone from being terrified by them after sunset. The disguised servant slips behind a rain barrel. His friend bites his sleeve to keep from laughing. You hear hoofbeats. A rider approaches through the mist. Unfortunately, it is not the merchant's groom, it is a mounted messenger wearing the colours of the local lord. His horse is already nervous from the cold. The servant does not notice the difference until too late. He springs from behind the barrel. He lifts both arms. He produces what is probably intended to be a supernatural howl. It sounds more like a cow discovering theology. The horse reacts immediately. Its head jerks upward. The messenger grabs the reins. One watchman above the gate shouts. The servant freezes. For perhaps half a heartbeat, the entire road holds still. Then everything becomes unnecessarily complicated. The horse sidesteps into a stack of baskets. The baskets collapse. The onion woman cries out. The mule behind you decides that whatever danger exists ahead should be escaped by moving backward through two pilgrims. A lantern swings wildly from the gatehouse, and the exhausted guard with the spear, seeing fur antlers, a panicked horse, and several people shouting at once, reaches the most medieval conclusion available. Alarm! The cry passes upward. Another watchman repeats it. Someone inside the town hears the word without seeing the cause. A hand reaches for the warning bell. The first strike rolls over the rooftops, deep, metallic, far louder than any prank deserves. You feel it in your ribs. Doors open along the street beyond the gate. Dogs begin barking. A blacksmith emerges from a workshop holding a hammer. Two men carrying buckets hurry toward the wall, perhaps assuming fire. A woman leans from an upper window with a candle, sees armed guards running below, and immediately disappears again. The disguised servant attempts to remove the antler. It catches in his hood. This improves nothing. The messenger finally steadies his horse, though his dignity appears less recoverable. The gate captain arrives wearing one boot. His other foot is wrapped in wool. He looks at the servant, he looks at the antler, he looks at the bell, still swinging overhead. There is a silence. You hear water dripping from the eaves. Somewhere behind you, the mule sneezes. The servant slowly lowers his arms. What had probably seemed hilarious beside the stable wall now appears considerably less inspired. False alarms are not harmless here. Town watches depend on bells and horns. Fire can sweep through timber houses. Raiders, thieves, or feuding retainers may appear on roads without much warning. Every unnecessary alarm pulls men from beds, workshops, kitchens, and guard posts. And so the joke reaches its natural conclusion, not with laughter, but with explanations. The gate captain orders the servant seized. His companion tries to blend into the baskets. He is still wearing the red cap. It is not a convincing disguise. You finally pass beneath the gate while the argument continues behind you. Inside the town, Smells of wet rushes, hearth smoke, horse dung, onions, and bread baked earlier in the day. Candlelight glows behind horn-covered windows. A dog begins following you, for reasons known only to itself. Behind you, the great oak doors groan shut. The iron bar drops into place, and somewhere in the gatehouse one badly timed joke is already becoming a story that will be retold much longer than its inventors would prefer. The bell above the gate eventually stops trembling, but its last note seems to travel with you through the narrow streets. You hear it fading between timber houses, slipping over steep roofs, and crooked chimneys, following you past shuttered shops where apprentices are sweeping scraps into the gutter before night. The dog continues behind you, its paws making soft sounds in the mud. It is a thin brown creature, with one folded ear, and the confidence of an animal that has decided you now belong to it. You do not encourage this arrangement. The dog ignores your opinion. Your lodging for the night lies beyond the town walls at a small monastery a short walk uphill. The gatekeeper had pointed you toward it after deciding that every bed inside town was either occupied overpriced or inhabited by something with fleas. So you leave by a smaller postern gate before it is barred. The path climbs between hedges silvered with frost. Your breath appears before you in pale clouds. Behind the town settles beneath its roofs, chimney smoke flattening in the cold air. Ahead, monastery bells begin sounding compline. Their slow rhythm is calmer than the chaos you have just escaped. Monastic life is shaped by bells. They wake sleepers, call brothers to prayer, interrupt work, mark meals, and divide darkness into recognizable pieces. In a world where few people possess anything resembling a reliable clock, sound gives shape to time. A bell before dawn means one thing. A bell at sunset means another. And a bell ringing unexpectedly can mean something entirely different. You pass through the monastery gate as the final notes fade. A lay brother wearing a coarse brown habit receives you beneath a lantern. His fingers are stained with garden soil, and his expression suggests he has already welcomed too many damp travellers today. He leads you towards the guest house. The monastery courtyard is quiet. Warm yellow light glows from narrow windows. A monk crosses the cloister carrying a beeswax candle protected by one hand. Another carries a basket of turnips towards the kitchen. Somewhere behind a wall, someone is coughing. With extraordinary dedication, your dog follows you through the gate. The lay brother looks down. You look down too. The dog sits. You shake your head. The brother sighs. Apparently, monasteries have procedures for pilgrims, beggars, nobles, merchants, sick travellers, and wandering clergy. No one has written a rule for dogs that appoint themselves. The guest house is plain but warm. Rushes cover part of the floor. A small hearth glows against one wall. Two merchants already sleep beneath wool blankets, their boots arranged beside them. A pilgrim sits near the fire eating coarse bread, dipped into a bowl of thin pottage. You receive much the same supper. Barley, leeks, a little onion. Possibly a piece of smoked fish, though identifying it requires faith. You warm your hands around the wooden bowl. Outside wind rubs against the shutters. The calm almost makes you forget the gatehouse prank. Almost. Then you notice 3 novices whispering near the passage. They are perhaps 15 or 16, wearing habits slightly too large for them, their hair clipped in the familiar tonsure. One is tall and narrow-faced. Another has cheeks permanently red from cold. The third keeps glancing toward a rope hanging near the cloister entrance. A bell rope. You immediately recognize the expression. It is the same expression you saw beside the stable baskets. There are certain human traditions far older than castles. One is hunger. Another is bad judgment among young men. The novices disappear. You return to your pottage. Perhaps nothing will happen. Perhaps you have simply become suspicious after one badly executed joke. The dog lies beside your boots and rests its chin on its paws. For a while the monastery settles deeper into darkness. The brothers complete their prayers. Candles are extinguished one by one. The kitchen grows quiet. Even the coughing monk appears to surrender. You are halfway towards sleep when a bell crashes through the night, not gently, not ceremonially. One huge metallic strike shakes the courtyard. Then another, then another. You sit upright. The merchants wake instantly. The pilgrim drops a shoe. Outside doors open. Feet slap against stone. Someone calls for a lantern. The bell rings again. In monasteries, different places may develop different customs for alarms, but bells can signal fire danger, death, or an urgent summons. Those living nearby learn their voices, and this bell is not supposed to be ringing now. You pull on your boots. The dog is already standing. Across the courtyard, monks emerge beneath cloaks, hoods pulled over sleepy faces. One carries a wooden bucket, another carries an iron poker for reasons that seem unclear, even to him. The abbot appears beneath the cloister. He does not hurry. This somehow makes him more alarming. The bell stops. Silence falls. Then a novice comes sliding down the rope, literally. His feet hit the floor. He loses his balance. He disappears into a pile of bundled rush mats. 2 other novices stand behind a pillar, their faces white. The truth arrives quickly. They had intended to ring the bell once, only once. The joke apparently was directed toward an older monk famous for sleeping through matins. They planned to make him believe he had missed the proper hour and watch him rush half-dressed toward the chapel. A modest ambition, but the rope caught. Then the novice panicked. Then he pulled harder. And then the bell began doing what large bells do when encouraged. The problem is that the monastery does not exist alone. Beyond its walls lie farms, cottages, a mill, 2 small hamlets. People hear the unexpected bell. They begin coming. The first farmer arrives carrying a pitchfork, then 2 mill workers, then a widow wearing a fur-lined cloak over her night shift, then several men with buckets because someone has decided the monastery must be on fire. A rider appears from the direction of town. Soon the courtyard contains monks, villagers, travellers, buckets, farm tools, lanterns, one confused donkey, and your dog, who considers the gathering excellent. The abbot listens to the explanation. His face does not change. No one can quite agree whether the punishment later involves copying Psalm's kitchen labour or cleaning the latrine channels. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. What everyone remembers is the old monk who was supposed to be the victim. He finally appears at the edge of the courtyard. He has slept through the entire alarm. He squints at the crowd, then at the bell, then at the three novices. He calmly turns around and returns to bed. For the first time that night, several people laugh, quietly. Even the abbot almost smiles. Almost. The villagers begin walking home. Buckets disappear. Lanterns drift back beyond the gate. You return to the guest house while the bell above the monastery settles into silence once more. The half-burned candle beside your bedding gives off a faint smell of warm wax. The dog circles twice before lying down. Somewhere outside, one of the novices is being given a broom, and as you pull the wool blanket to your chin, you begin to suspect that medieval life contains considerably more accidental night alarms than anyone bothered to mention. Sleep returns slowly after the false bell. The guest house settles again around you, though now every small sound seems suspicious. A roof beam creaks above the hearth. Wind presses against the shutters. Somewhere in the courtyard, a wooden bucket scrapes over stone as one of the unfortunate novices begins whatever punishment the abbot has chosen for him. The dog sleeps beside your boots. You envy him. He has apparently accepted that bells ring for no reason. Strangers gather with pitchforks in the night, and beds consist mostly of straw wrapped in cloth. For a medieval dog, this may simply be Tuesday. You turn beneath the wool blanket and watch the half-burned beeswax candle beside the wall shrink toward its holder. The guest house smells of damp wool ashes, old rushes, and the faint sourness of travelling clothes that have been worn for several days, too many. One merchant snores beneath a blanket in the corner. The other makes a soft, clicking sound in his sleep. At last your eyes begin to close. Then someone whispers outside the door. You open them again. Another whisper, a suppressed laugh. You recognize one of the voices, the red-cheeked novice. Apparently, one disaster has not exhausted the monastery's supply of bad ideas. The latch moves. A pale shape appears in the passage. At first you see only white. A white face, white shoulders, white hands. The figure glides slowly through the doorway with both arms held stiffly forward. For a moment even you feel a cold tightening in your stomach. Medieval darkness is good at helping the imagination. People here grow up hearing stories about restless souls, burial grounds, spirits unable to find peace, and the dead returning to warn the living. Church teaching and village superstition often overlap in strange ways, especially after midnight, when every candle flame seems too small. Some swear that certain spirits appear pale because death has drained all colour from them. Others say the dead can be kept away with holy water, prayer iron blessed herbs, or the invocation of a favourite saint. A few people simply recommend shutting the door. This last method appears practical. The pale figure advances another step. Then you smell flower, not death, not grave earth, flower. The novice has covered his face and habit with enough flour to supply a respectable bakery. Behind him, another novice peers around the doorway, silently shaking with laughter. Their intended victim is an elderly lay brother sleeping in a small chamber at the top of a narrow staircase beside the guest house. The plan is painfully obvious. The flower-covered novice will climb the stairs. He will scratch at the old brother's door. He will moan like a wandering soul. The brother will wake, see a ghost, and presumably provide entertainment. You could warn them. You probably should. Instead, you sit beneath your blanket and watch the procession pass. This is how history gets its stories. Someone sensible notices trouble and decides to observe. The ghost reaches the stairs. They are steep stone steps worn shallow in the middle by generations of feet. A tiny oil lamp burns in a wall niche, giving just enough light to turn every shadow into something unpleasant. The novice begins climbing, one step, then another. His accomplice follows several paces behind. The dog wakes. His ears rise. He sees the white figure. The dog growls. The novice freezes. You whisper softly to the animal. The dog does not consider your opinion. He barks once, loudly. The flower ghost jerks backward. His heel slips. He grabs the wall. His sleeve strikes the oil lamp. The flame goes out. Darkness swallows the staircase. From above comes the scrape of a door opening. What is it? The elderly brother is awake. The flower-covered novice, now terrified of being discovered, attempts to hurry downward. His accomplice is still coming upward. They collide. There is a thump, a gasp. Then several soft impacts, as feet, elbows, and habits become briefly impossible to distinguish. You hear someone slide down 3 steps. A wooden bowl clatters across the floor. The dog begins barking with renewed enthusiasm. The elderly brother appears above holding a candle. He looks down. What he sees is not encouraging. 2 pale flower-covered figures are tangled halfway along the stair, one groaning beneath the other. For 1 heartbeat, nobody speaks. Then the old brother cries out, "Saints preserve us!" His candle shakes. A merchant wakes behind you and sees the white figures. He screams. The other merchant wakes because the first merchant screams. He sees nothing clearly, which is even worse. Within moments, the guest house contains enough confusion for a minor siege. Someone throws a blanket over his head. Someone reaches for a walking staff. The pilgrim from supper presses his pewter badge against his chest and begins repeating a prayer. You stand and grab the remaining candle. The flower ghost finally crawls into the light. His nose is bleeding slightly, though nothing seems seriously hurt. His face is streaked white, his hair is white, his entire expression says that death would almost be preferable to explaining this to the abbot. Then the older brother notices the flower. He stares, he reaches down. He rubs some between two fingers. Flower. Silence. The supernatural crisis ends immediately. Embarrassment takes its place. The monks who arrive moments later find two novices covered in flour, three terrified guests, one overturned stool, a dog barking at everybody, and an old lay brother holding a pinch of evidence. No one can quite agree whether the old brother is angrier about the attempted haunting or the wasted flour. Food stores matter. Grain is labor. Flour represents fields ploughed, seed scattered, wheat harvested, grain threshed, carried, milled, sifted, and guarded from damp rats and theft. Using a sackful to impersonate the dead is therefore not merely foolish, it is expensive foolishness. The cellarer is summoned, his reaction is memorable. He looks at the novices, he looks at the white footprints across the floor, he closes his eyes. You suspect he is praying, possibly for patience, possibly for better novices. By morning the flour has worked itself into every crack in the staircase. The two offenders are given brushes and cloths. Their habits remain ghostly despite repeated beating in the courtyard. The old brother refuses to discuss the incident, yet rumours spread anyway. A kitchen servant claims the apparition had glowing eyes. A pilgrim swears the staircase became suddenly cold. Another insists he heard chains. There were no chains. Even now it is hard to tell whether anyone truly believes the story or simply prefers the improved version. You leave the guest house after first light. The dog follows. Behind you the monastery stands quiet beneath a pale winter sky, while two flower-covered novices scrub stone steps under the supervision of a monk who trusts neither ghosts nor teenagers. By the time the monastery disappears behind the bare trees, morning has settled into one of those grey winter days that never seems entirely awake. You follow a narrow road between hedges crusted with frost. Mud sucks softly at your boots where wagon wheels have broken the frozen surface, and the dog trots several paces ahead as if he has been hired to inspect the route. You have still not named him. This appears to trouble him very little. A cold wind slips beneath your cloak and carries the smell of wood smoke from somewhere farther along the road. You pass a roadside shrine set into a shallow stone niche where a faded painted saint watches travellers through centuries of rain. Someone has left a bent copper coin beside it. Someone else has tied a strip of wool to a thorn branch nearby. Such offerings are common enough. A traveller may whisper a prayer before crossing dangerous country, touch a pilgrim badge for luck, or promise a candle to a saint if a journey ends safely. Considering what you have witnessed since yesterday evening, promising several candles begins to seem reasonable. The road bends around a stand of alder trees. There, beside a bridge, hardly wide enough for one cart, stands an alehouse. Its sign hangs from the crooked beam and shows something that may once have been painted as a white hart. Years of rain have transformed the animal into a pale shape. resembling a startled goat. Smoke leaks from the roof. 3 horses stand beneath a lean-to. You need warmth. The dog needs nothing apparently, but enters anyway. Inside the alehouse is dim, warm, and heavily perfumed with humanity. Wet cloaks steam beside the hearth. Rushes lie over the packed earth floor. Smoke hangs beneath soot-black rafters, because the chimney appears to consider removing smoke optional. A woman behind the serving board ladles pottage from an iron pot. You pay a small coin for a wooden bowl, coarse bread, and weak ale. The bread could probably reinforce a gatehouse. You soak it in the broth. Problem solved. Several travellers sit around the room. A pair of drovers warm their hands near the fire. A man carrying bolts of cloth has arranged his bundles where he can see them. Near the centre sits a broad merchant wearing a fur-edged cloak and a silver buckle large enough to announce prosperity from across the room. He has been talking since before you arrive. You know this because nobody else appears surprised. He speaks about prices, then roads, then his horse, then the incompetence of toll collectors, then his own skill in judging wool. His companions nod with the exhausted patience of men who know another cup of ale will not improve matters but intend to order one anyway. Behind him, 2 young stable hands exchange glances. You recognize those glances again. At this point, you begin to suspect the expression should be painted over every medieval doorway as a warning. One stable hand crouches beside the merchant's stool. It is a simple 3-legged thing, sturdy enough when all 3 legs are attached. That condition is about to change. The young man quietly loosens one wooden peg. His friend covers his mouth. The intention is obvious. The merchant will sit. The stool will wobble. Perhaps he will land gently in the rushes. Everyone will laugh. Civilization will continue. You take another spoonful of pottage and consider intervening. Then the merchant stands. He raises his cup to emphasize some important detail about Flemish cloth. The stable hand moves quickly. He pulls the peg almost free. The merchant finishes his story. He sits, the stool folds, not dramatically, almost politely. The merchant descends with the slow astonishment of a man whose furniture has betrayed him personally. His arms rise, his cup tilts. Ale flies backward. It lands directly on a travelling potter carrying a tray of small, glazed cups. The potter jumps. The tray slips. 3 cups strike the floor. 1 survives. 2 become history. The potter curses under his breath and steps backward. His heel catches a bucket. The bucket overturns. Water spreads across the rushes. The dog, delighted by the sudden activity, springs out of the way and collides with a sack belonging to one of the drovers. The sack falls against the hearth bench. A man sitting there jerks sideways. His elbow strikes another cup. More ale falls. Somehow, within perhaps 4 seconds, one loosened peg has redistributed half the room's beverages. The alehouse keeper turns from the pot. She looks at the merchant on the floor. She looks at the broken pottery. She looks at the wet rushes. She looks at the stable hands. The laughter stops. Almost. One of the drovers makes a small choking noise into his sleeve. The merchant rises. His fur-edged cloak is soaked at the back. A piece of rush clings to his hair. He demands to know who is responsible. Nobody answers. The stool lies beside him, missing its peg. The stable hands suddenly become deeply interested in the architecture. Then something bangs outside. A horse whinnies sharply. Everyone looks toward the door. The potter runs out first. You follow with several others. In the yard, one of the frightened pack horses has pulled against its tether when the shouting began inside. The rope has slipped from the post. The animal has backed into a small hand cart loaded with pottery wrapped in straw. The cart tips, not completely, just enough. A bundle slides off, then another. The potter reaches them too late. The second bundle lands badly. The sound is soft, a series of little cracks hidden beneath straw. The potter closes his eyes. No one speaks. A prank meant to drop one boastful merchant into some rushes has now broken cups inside the alehouse and damaged a portion of an entire pottery shipment outside. The stable hands emerge slowly. Their faces have changed. The joke no longer belongs to them. It has become a matter of money. That is usually when medieval humor becomes serious. A broken cup is not simply replaced by ordering another from a warehouse. Pottery requires clay dug and prepared vessels shaped, dried, fired, transported, and sold. A merchant carrying fragile goods over muddy roads accepts plenty of risk without assistance from bored stable boys. The alehouse keeper begins calculating losses aloud. The merchant begins calculating insults. The potter begins calculating everything. No one can quite agree whether the stool was meant to collapse completely or merely wobble. The stable hands insist the latter. The merchant believes nothing they say. The dog finds the missing wooden peg beneath a bench and carries it into the yard. This is not helpful evidence handling. Eventually, the alehouse keeper orders both pranksters to help repack the pottery and clean the floor. Their wages, she tells them, may be discussed afterward. Her tone makes the discussion sound brief. You finish your pottage near the hearth while new rushes are spread over the wet patch. The merchant now sits on a bench. He tests it twice before trusting it. You cannot blame him. When you step back onto the road, the sky has brightened slightly. The dog trots after you with the stolen stool peg still in his mouth. Behind you, voices continue bargaining over compensation. Ahead lies the town market. And after bells, ghosts, and treacherous furniture, you are beginning to wonder whether the safest thing in the Middle Ages is simply never to let anyone whisper while smiling. The road carries you toward the market town beneath a sky the color of old pewter. By mid-morning, frost has softened into dampness. Water drips from hedges. Wagon ruts deepen beneath passing carts, and your boots acquire another respectable layer of mud. The dog still carries the stool peg for part of the journey. Eventually, he abandons it beside a ditch, perhaps deciding that medieval evidence disposal has gone far enough. Ahead, roofs begin rising beyond the fields. You hear the market before you see it, cattle lowing, geese protesting, cartwheels grinding over stone, voices calling prices across the square. A church bell sounds somewhere within the town, followed by the sharper clatter of a blacksmith working close to the gate. You pass beneath an arch where a clerk sits behind a small table collecting tolls from merchants bringing goods inside. Beside him hangs a wooden board showing customary payments for carts, animals, and certain wares. Market tolls matter more than they appear. A lord may hold the right to charge for entering, selling, using stalls, weighing goods, or crossing bridges. Every basket of onions and bolt of cloth enters a world of tiny obligations. Even chickens, it seems, cannot participate in commerce without bureaucracy. You hand over your small fee and step into the square. The place is alive with colour despite the grey morning. Red and yellow cloth hangs from a draper's stall. Bundles of herbs lie beside pots of honey. Fishmongers arrange smoked eels and salted herring on boards. A baker stacks dark loaves beneath a cloth to protect them from drizzle. Nearby, a woman sells onions, cabbages, and dried peas. A butcher argues over the weight of a joint of pork. Several pilgrims stand around a badge seller, examining little pewter images of saints, shrines, and holy symbols. Pilgrim badges can be souvenirs, declarations of devotion, and proof that someone has visited a distant shrine. They can also be remarkably useful for convincing strangers that you are more respectable than your boots suggest. You move slowly through the crowd. The dog discovers a sausage stall. You immediately lose his loyalty. At the edge of the square, 3 apprentices are decorating a pig. There is no sentence that should make you feel more cautious. The pig is large pink, beneath patches of mud, and deeply unconcerned with human comedy. One apprentice ties a strip of blue cloth around its neck. Another fastens a wreath of wilted greenery between its ears. The third holds what looks like an old wooden tally stick. They are laughing quietly. Across the square sits the market toll collector. He is a narrow man wearing a dark cap with an ink-stained thumb and the severe posture of someone who enjoys discovering unpaid fees. The apprentices clearly do not admire him. The plan appears to be a parody. They intend to lead the pig past his table dressed like an important visitor, perhaps announcing that even the animal must pay market dues. It is the sort of joke that depends almost entirely on everyone remaining calm. This should already concern you. The first apprentice leads the pig by a rope. The second walks beside it like a servant attending a noble traveller. The third clears his throat. Several nearby merchants turn to watch. The toll collector looks up. The apprentice bows dramatically. The pig grunts. Someone laughs. The collector does not. Then the apprentice places the tally stick beside the animal and declares with exaggerated solemnity that the distinguished visitor wishes to negotiate his market privileges. More laughter. The pig investigates the collector's table. The collector pushes its snout away. The pig dislikes this. It jerks its head. The blue cloth slips over one eye. The animal panics. The rope pulls free. For a heartbeat, the pig stands perfectly still. Then it runs. Not fast by horse standards. Extremely fast by crowded market standards. It charges between two vegetable stalls. A basket of turnips overturns. People scatter. A goose seller drops his wicker cage. 3 geese escape and immediately decide they have been given command of the square. The pig veers left. Its greenery wreath falls off. The dog sees the pig. This is the happiest moment of his morning. He gives chase. You shout after him. The dog considers your authority theoretical. The pig barrels through a row of pottery. A merchant grabs one end of his table. His apprentice grabs the other. The table survives. Several bowls do not. The pig changes direction again. Now one of the geese is chasing the dog. The dog is chasing the pig. An apprentice is chasing all 3. You begin to suspect. The market has stopped functioning as a commercial institution. A stall selling apples becomes the next casualty. The pig clips one support pole. The awning sags. A basket tips. Apples roll over the wet stones in every direction. People step backward. Someone slips. A man carrying a bundle of coarse wool turns sharply to avoid him and collides with a fish seller. 3 smoked fish land in the mud. The fish seller looks at them, then at the pig, then at heaven. Perhaps he expects an explanation. None arrives. The toll collector is now shouting for the town sergeant. 2 officials emerge from beside the guild hall. One carries a staff. The other carries the expression of a man already certain this will require paperwork. The pig reaches the center fountain. There it pauses, for no reason anyone can understand. The dog stops several feet away. The geese stop behind the dog. For one absurd moment, animals and humans form a silent circle. Then the pig sits down in the mud. The crisis is over. Almost. The apprentices retrieve it cautiously. The blue cloth hangs beneath its chin. The toll collector approaches. His table has survived, but his inkpot has not. Black ink spreads across several account sheets. His expression makes the damaged pottery seem comparatively unimportant. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the prank was originally meant as an insult to the collector personally or merely a joke about market tolls. The apprentices insist it was harmless fun. The stall holders begin presenting losses: turnips, bowls, apples, fish, 1 broken cage, a damaged awning, possibly a torn cloak. Money changes the mood again. The manor court may deal with disputes arising from damaged goods, disorder, unpaid dues, or breaches of local custom. The apprentices now face not merely scolding but compensation fines and the displeasure of masters who would much rather they spend the morning learning trades. An elderly herb seller shakes her head as she gathers fallen rosemary. She mutters that foolishness attracts misfortune. Then she ties a small sprig to her stall because some people believe strongly scented herbs help repel bad influences. Whether they repel apprentices remains unproven. You help return several apples to a basket. The dog returns with a smoked herring in his mouth. You choose not to ask. By noon the market gradually restores itself. Stalls stand upright again. The geese are captured. The pig is tied securely beside a stable stripped of all ceremonial decoration. The three apprentices sit outside the guild hall awaiting judgment. None is laughing now. You buy a piece of coarse bread and continue toward the road beyond the square. Behind you, traders resume calling prices as though nothing happened. But somewhere undoubtedly a story has already begun growing. By next winter, the pig will probably have knocked down half the market. By the generation after that, it may be remembered as large as a bull. That is how medieval disasters become legends, one muddy hoofprint at a time. The market noise fades behind you as the road narrows between winter fields. For a while only the dog keeps you company. He trots ahead with the stolen herring hanging from his mouth, tail raised as if he has personally negotiated a successful commercial arrangement. You decide there is little point trying to recover the fish now. The road climbs gently. Frost remains in the shadows beneath hedges, though the open ground has softened into mud. Small patches of snow cling to the roots of bare oaks. Every few miles a roadside cross or shrine breaks the emptiness, sometimes only a niche containing a weathered image of the Virgin. Sometimes a larger stone structure protected by a little roof. Travellers pause at such places. Some cross themselves, some leave coins, some light candles when weather permits. Others touch a wooden image before continuing, hoping for protection against thieves, illness, broken wheels, sudden storms, and whatever else the road has prepared. Given your recent experience, the list should probably include decorated pigs. Near midday, you catch up with a group of pilgrims. There are 6 of them. 2 men wear broad hats decorated with badges. An older woman carries a staff polished smooth by years of use. A young clerk has a leather satchel beneath his cloak. Another traveller leads a small donkey laden with blankets and bundles. The final pilgrim is carrying a box, not a large box, a narrow oak casket wrapped in wool and tied with cord. Everyone keeps glancing at it. You naturally become curious. The clerk notices. He lowers his voice. Inside, he explains, is supposed to be a fragment from the bone of a saint. Which saint depends on whom you ask. One pilgrim says Saint Blaise, another insists Saint Cuthbert. The man carrying the box says only that it came from a respectable chapel farther north and is being carried to a manor household where the lady has been ill. No one can quite agree whether the object is genuine. This is not unusual. Relics can attract pilgrims, donations, prestige, and powerful devotion. Churches treasure bones, cloth pieces of wood, hair, teeth, and objects believed to have belonged to holy figures. Yet doubtful relics circulate too. Even medieval people can be skeptical. Some priests complain about suspicious objects and exaggerated claims. Some travelers believe immediately, others believe cautiously, and some simply prefer not to insult a saint in case the relic happens to be real. This seems like a sensible policy. You fall into step beside them, the dog joins too. Nobody asks whether he belongs to you anymore. By afternoon the sky darkens, a light rain begins. The pilgrims pull their cloaks tighter and hurry toward a small roadside hospice attached to a chapel. It is hardly more than a hall, stable, kitchen and shrine, but the roof does not leak much and a fire burns inside. That is luxury enough. The travellers settle near the hearth. Wet wool begins steaming. A servant brings bowls of pea pottage and slices of coarse bread. The relic box is placed carefully on a bench near the chapel door. Everyone can see it. Everyone is told not to touch it. This is where the trouble begins. One of the younger pilgrims, a cheerful fellow named Martin, has been teasing his companions since noon. He hides walking staffs. He puts pebbles inside another pilgrim's hood. He imitates the clerk's solemn reading voice. None of this causes disaster. Unfortunately, success encourages ambition. Martin looks at the relic box, then at his friend. His friend immediately shakes his head. Martin smiles. You recognize the expression. Again, you are beginning to think medieval Europe would be safer if smiling after whispering were taxed. While the others eat, Martin slips toward the bench. He does not open the casket. Even he seems unwilling to risk that. Instead, he takes the entire wrapped box and hides it beneath a pile of spare wool blankets in a storage alcove. The plan is simple. Someone will notice. Everyone will panic briefly. Martin will reveal the hiding place. There will be laughter. This is apparently the theory. He returns to the fire. Several minutes pass. The older woman rises. She looks toward the bench. Her bowl nearly falls. The relic. The room goes silent. Everyone turns. The bench is empty. The man responsible for carrying the casket becomes pale. The clerk stands so quickly that his stool tips backward. Martin watches. For the first few moments he appears delighted. Then the chapel keeper enters. He hears what happened. His face changes. The relic has not merely been misplaced. If someone has stolen it, the matter could be sacrilege. If the saint has somehow withdrawn protection, that is worse. Some swear sacred objects can punish thieves. Stories circulate of stolen relics becoming impossibly heavy animals, refusing to carry them offenders, falling ill, or miraculous signs revealing hiding places. Whether everyone believes such tales hardly matters. The room believes them now. The search begins. Blankets are lifted, bags opened, benches checked. The stable is searched, then the chapel, then the yard. Martin's smile disappears. He edges toward the storage alcove. Unfortunately, someone has already carried the blanket pile outside to shake it. The casket is no longer beneath it. Martin freezes. Now he searches too. This part was not planned. Rain falls harder, lanterns appear, travellers spread along the road. One pilgrim searches beneath hedges, another checks the ditch. The chapel keeper examines the roadside shrine 50 paces away, apparently hoping the relic has returned itself to sacred ground. You hold a lantern while the dog sniffs enthusiastically through wet grass. Martin finally confesses. The reaction is quiet. That makes it worse. He explains the blankets. The clerk closes his eyes. The carrier of the relic looks as though he might personally turn Martin into one. Then the dog barks. Everyone turns. He is scratching beneath a cart. A stable servant crawls underneath and pulls out the wool-wrapped box. Apparently, when the blankets were carried outside, the casket fell unnoticed, slid down the muddy yard, and disappeared beneath the cart. For several seconds nobody moves. The chapel keeper takes the box. He checks the cords. Nothing is broken. The relic is safe. Rain taps gently against the stable roof. Martin exhales. The older pilgrim does not laugh. Neither does anyone else. The chapel keeper makes Martin kneel beside the shrine and apologize. Whether the apology is directed towards the pilgrims, the chapel, the saint, or all three remains unclear. Probably all three is safest. Later, back inside, the relic box is placed on a high shelf, far from Martin. The dog lies beside the hearth, damp and satisfied. You wrap both hands around a cup of warm ale. Outside, the rain continues across the darkening road, and once again a joke intended to last a minute has occupied most of an afternoon, frightened half a dozen travellers, and nearly created a theological crisis beside a muddy cart. Rain follows you through most of the next morning. It is not heavy rain, only the persistent kind that settles into wool, darkens leather, and turns every rut in the road into a narrow brown pool. By the time you leave the roadside hospice, the relic box has been tied to the pilgrim's pack with enough cord to secure a small siege engine. Martin walks several paces behind it. Nobody has asked him to. He simply seems to understand that distance is wise. The dog trots beside you, occasionally stopping to investigate hedges and puddles while the road climbs toward wooded country. Somewhere beyond the low hills stands the manor, where several of the pilgrims intend to stop before continuing south. You decide to travel with them. A roof, even a draughty one, seems preferable to another evening spent discovering how inventive rain can become. By late afternoon, the manor appears through bare trees. It is not a great castle. There are no vast curtain walls or towering stone keeps. Instead, you see a timber palisade, a gatehouse, barns, stables, workshops, and a long stone hall rising above the clustered roofs. Smoke drifts from its chimney. Chickens scratch beneath a cart. 2 hunting dogs sleep beside the steps as if guarding the household requires conserving energy. A steward receives the travellers. The relic is carried inside immediately. Apparently, the lady of the manor has indeed been unwell, and the household priest takes charge of the little casket with an expression that suggests he intends never to let Martin within 20 paces of it. You are shown toward the lower end of the great hall. Rushes cover the stone floor mixed with dried herbs that release faint scents when crushed underfoot. Rosemary, perhaps, sweet woodruff, maybe lavender left from warmer months. The hall is already preparing for supper. Servants carry trenchers of coarse bread to the tables. Iron spits turn near the hearth. A pot of pottage simmers over the fire, thick with peas, onions, and bits of salted meat. At the high table sits the lord's household. Below it gather retainers visiting merchants, clerks, and several young men whose expensive belts and carefully combed hair identify them as people with enough status to be dangerous and enough leisure to become bored. This combination rarely improves an evening. You settle near the lower table. The dog curls beneath the bench. A servant brings ale. For a while everything is pleasantly ordinary. You eat pottage from a trencher softened by gravy. A platter of roast fowl passes along the table. Someone brings hard cheese. The hall warms with conversation and hearth smoke. Near the high table, two young retainers whisper. You notice them because one keeps glancing beneath the benches. You already know that look. The last few days have trained you well. One of the retainers has hidden a cord beneath the table. The other has attached it to the leg of a low bench. Their intended victim is another young knight named Hugh, a loud fellow who has spent much of supper telling everyone how little fear he feels during tournaments. Apparently his friends would like to test how gracefully he handles sitting down. The plan is modest. When Hugh lowers himself onto the bench, one retainer will tug the cord. The bench will slide backward. Hugh will land among the rushes. There will be laughter. Perhaps his pride will suffer more than his body. Unfortunately, seating arrangements change. A servant approaches the high table and quietly speaks to an older nobleman wearing a dark green cloak lined with fur. The nobleman rises. He steps down from the dais. Someone makes room. Then, instead of Hugh, the older man chooses the rigged bench. Both pranksters go pale. One reaches beneath the table trying to free the cord. The other whispers something urgent. Hugh notices nothing. He is busy explaining how a war horse once nearly threw him. The older nobleman sits. The bench holds. For one hopeful moment disaster appears avoidable. Then a serving boy passes behind the prankster. His foot catches the loose cord. The cord pulls. The bench slides. The nobleman vanishes below table height. A wooden cup tips. Ale pours across the boards. A trencher flips onto the lap of a clerk. Someone gasps. The nobleman lands in the rushes with considerably more dignity than the circumstances deserve. Silence spreads across the hall. Even the hearth seems quieter. The dog lifts his head. None of the pranksters still holds the cord. This is unfortunate. The older man rises slowly. A piece of rosemary clings to his fur-lined cloak. He looks at the bench, then at the cord, then at the young retainer. No one laughs. Hugh does briefly. He stops when he realizes nobody joins him. The lord of the manor lowers his cup. You cannot hear exactly what he says, but the retainers immediately stand. The joke has reached the dangerous border between household amusement and insult. Medieval courts and noble households tolerate plenty of rough humour. Feasts can be noisy places. People gamble, wrestle, tease, sing and play tricks. But rank matters. A joke played on an equal may be forgiven. The same joke played on a superior can become humiliation. And public humiliation is rarely simple when honour service and reputation are involved. No one can quite agree whether the older nobleman is angrier about falling or about being seen to fall. Those who later tell the story insist he was a man with very little patience for laughter at his expense. The two retainers are brought forward. They explain. They point toward Hugh. Hugh immediately objects. Apparently, being the intended victim offers no comfort when punishment is being distributed. The Lord listens. He does not shout. That somehow makes the hall even more attentive. At last, he orders the two pranksters removed from the high table and assigned to stable duty for several days. Whether they also lose wages or privileges is discussed too quietly for you to hear. The older nobleman returns to his seat. This time a servant checks the bench first, very thoroughly. The feast resumes, slowly. Conversation returns in cautious waves. The clerk wipes gravy from his sleeve. Hugh stops discussing horsemanship. One of the servants replaces the wet rushes beneath the table. You notice an old woman near the hearth quietly make the sign of the cross when the bench collapses again while being carried away. Some people believe repeated mishaps in one place can indicate bad luck clinging to an object. Others would simply call it poor carpentry. Even now it is hard to tell which explanation the household prefers. Later, when the tables are cleared, the two young retainers pass through the hall, carrying buckets toward the stables. Their fine belts are gone, their sleeves are rolled. Hugh raises his cup toward them. Neither responds. You stretch your legs near the fire as the last candles burn lower. Above you, smoke gathers beneath the rafters. The suspicious dog sleeps against your boot. And somewhere beneath the high table lies one forgotten loop of cord, a small reminder that in a medieval hall the distance between a clever joke and a terrible mistake can be no wider than a bench. The great hall grows quieter as the feast finally loosens its grip on the household. Trenchers disappear into baskets, cups are gathered, servants sweep bones crumbs and wilted herbs from the tables while fresh rushes are spread over the dampest patches of floor. At the far end of the chamber, the lord and his guests withdraw behind a carved screen, leaving retainers, travellers, servants, and tired household officers to settle wherever warmth can still be found. You remain close to the hearth. It seems sensible. The stone walls have been storing winter cold since long before sunset, and once the fire sinks, the hall will become little better than a roofed courtyard. You loosen your boots and pull your cloak around your shoulders. The dog circles 3 times beside you before lying down with his nose beneath his tail. Across the hall, the 2 retainers punished for the bench prank are still working. One carries a bucket toward the stable passage. The other has been given the deeply honourable task of scraping mud from riding tack. Neither looks amused any more. Hugh the knight, who was supposed to fall from the bench, lounges near the fire with several companions. He has recovered enough confidence to tell stories again, though now he speaks more softly. That seems wise. Outside wind moves along the battlements. You hear it slipping through arrow slits and rattling wooden shutters somewhere above. A bell rings from the small chapel. The household priest finishes the final prayers of the evening. One by one candles are pinched out. Soon only the hearth and a handful of wall lamps remain. Someone produces wool blankets. You arrange yours over your knees. For perhaps half an hour nothing happens. This is unusual enough to make you suspicious. Then Hugh glances toward the staircase leading to the wall walk. One of his companions whispers, another smothers a laugh. You close your eyes briefly. Of course. Apparently, one collapsing bench has not satisfied the household's appetite for poor decisions. The joke begins with a horn. It hangs near the inner gate, a long animal horn, fitted with a metal mouthpiece used by the watch when someone needs to be summoned quickly. Signals matter here. A horn from the wall may warn of riders approaching. Several blasts may mean danger. A bell may signal fire. A shout passed along the ramparts can wake an entire household. There is no telephone, no flashing light, no neatly printed notice informing everyone that the disturbance is probably nothing. There is only sound, and people trust it. That makes the horn an exceptionally poor object for comedy. Hugh appears not to see the problem. Perhaps he intends revenge for the bench. Perhaps he simply wants to watch the sleepy guards stumble into the courtyard. Those who later tell the tale never fully agree. He waits until the steward has disappeared. Then he slips towards the passage. His companions follow. You should probably remain where you are. Instead you rise. The dog rises too. Naturally, you follow at a distance. The passage is colder than the hall. Your breath shows faintly in the torchlight. Stone steps climb toward the gatehouse, each worn smooth at the centre by countless boots. A small niche contains an image of Saint Michael the Archangel, often associated with protection against evil and danger. Someone has tucked a dried sprig of rue beside the carving. Rue is used in remedies, charms, and protective customs, though no one can quite agree how much protection it offers against bored knights. At the top of the stairs, Hugh reaches the horn. A watchman is absent for only a moment, perhaps checking the outer parapet. Hugh lifts the instrument. His companions grin. He blows once. The note rolls across the courtyard. Low, harsh, louder than expected. A horse stamps in the stable. Hugh smiles. Then one of his companions whispers that one blast is not enough. This is where the joke becomes worse. Hugh blows again, then a third time. Across the wall, another guard hears the signal. He cannot see who sounded it. He shouts toward the tower. A second horn answers. That was not part of the plan. Hugh lowers the instrument. His smile vanishes. Below, a stable door opens. A groom runs into the courtyard, pulling on one boot. Then another man appears carrying a spear. A servant emerges from the kitchen with a lantern. Someone shouts that riders have been seen. Someone else claims there are men near the trees. There are no men near the trees. At least, none that anyone can see. But darkness is generous with possibilities. The alarm spreads. The gate captain appears. Bolts are thrown into place. The outer doors are checked. Archers climb toward the battlements. A sleepy guard arrives wearing his padded coat backward. No one tells him. The dog barks once. You suspect he feels the household finally understands his profession. Hugh stands frozen beside the horn. His companions begin edging away. Then another guard arrives from the outer wall. What did you see? Hugh says nothing. The guard looks at him, then at the horn, then at his companions. The truth settles over the stairway slowly. The gate captain is summoned again. You begin to wonder whether medieval gate captains spend most of their lives being awakened by other people's stupidity. Below, the courtyard fills with armed men. Several servants carry buckets because someone has also decided there might be fire. A cook holds a cleaver. A stable boy grips a rake. One elderly retainer arrives wearing a fur-lined cloak over his sleeping shirt and looks furious enough to frighten any raider who actually appears. The captain climbs the steps. He sees Hugh. He sees the horn. His expression becomes very still. Hugh explains. A joke, a harmless signal. Just a little fun. The captain looks toward the battlements where half the night watch is now searching empty fields. Then he looks toward the stables where nervous horses stamp beneath lantern light. Harmless. He repeats the word quietly. Nobody laughs. A false alarm can expose weaknesses. Men rush from posts. Gates may be opened or closed at the wrong moment. Horses can injure themselves in panic. Servants may knock over lamps, and in cold darkness, one frightened rumour can become 10 before anyone discovers what actually happened. Some households even keep particular signal patterns known only to guards and retainers. A prank with a horn is therefore not merely annoying. It interferes with the fragile system that keeps everyone asleep safely behind walls. Hugh is ordered downstairs. His companions follow. The household slowly settles again. Spears return to racks, buckets return to kitchens. The guard wearing his coat backward finally notices. He corrects it without comment. You return to the hall. The dog settles beside your blanket. Outside, the wind continues across the wall as though nothing happened. Hugh does not return to the hearth. You later hear he has been ordered to stand part of the remaining watch beside the very guards he disturbed. A fitting punishment. Cold, boring, and several hours long. As you lie beneath your wool blanket, the horn remains silent. The half-burned candle near the hearth shrinks lower. And somewhere above, Hugh learns that a joke meant to wake a few guards is much less amusing when you must spend the rest of the night awake with them. Dawn arrives pale and reluctant over the manor walls. You wake to the sound of boots on stone and the soft scrape of a broom moving through yesterday's rushes. The hearth has collapsed into red embers. Somewhere above, a guard coughs into the cold morning, and from the courtyard comes the dull rhythm of a stable boy splitting kindling. Hugh is still on watch. You see him when you step outside. He stands beside the gatehouse, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, his face grey with exhaustion, one hand resting on a spear he clearly wishes were a pillow. The gate captain passes him without comment. That silence seems to be doing excellent work. The dog stretches beside you, yawns, and immediately becomes more energetic than everyone else in the courtyard combined. Breakfast is simple: coarse bread, a little cheese, warm ale. A servant offers a bowl of yesterday's pottage reheated over the kitchen fire. You accept it gratefully. Travellers in this world rarely waste food merely because it has survived one night. Cold weather is especially unforgiving. Winter stores are measured carefully. Salted meat, dried peas, onions, oats, and smoked fish may have to last until spring brings fresh growth again. A household that throws away edible pottage is either extremely rich or extremely foolish, possibly both. You pull on your damp cloak and join a small company leaving through the gate. Two merchants travel with a cart. A clerk rides a small brown mare. 3 retainers accompany them for part of the road. The dog comes too. No one discusses whether he should. At this point, he appears to have become an institution. The road descends from the manor through frozen fields. Frost whitens the furrows. Your boots crunch through thin ice where puddles have frozen overnight. Beyond the fields the road enters forest. Bare branches lace across the sky. Oaks stand dark and heavy beside younger ash and hazel. Fallen leaves form a damp brown carpet beneath the trees. Sound changes here. The open wind disappears, hoofbeats become softer, a raven calls somewhere above. The cartwheel creaks at regular intervals. You walk beside it for warmth, hands tucked beneath your cloak. One of the merchants carries a little charm sewn into the lining of his hood. He tells you it contains a scrap of parchment marked with a prayer. Travellers sometimes wear written blessings, saints' tokens, crosses or other protective objects on uncertain roads. Whether these are sanctioned devotion, folk custom, or some mixture of both depends very much on whom you ask. Some swear that iron carried near the body discourages harmful spirits. Others prefer holy words. One old carter you pass seems to trust garlic. The forest road bends. Ahead stands a figure, tall, still, human-shaped. It waits beside an oak. The company slows. The clerk's mare raises her head. One of the retainers reaches toward his sword. You narrow your eyes. The figure wears a ragged hood. Its arms hang strangely. Something pale shows where a face should be. Nobody speaks. Stories cling to roads like mist. Robbers sometimes watch from woodland. Outlaws hide beyond cultivated land. Travellers tell of strange hermits, wandering penitents, dead men, seen at crossroads, and forest beings that appear only to those foolish enough to travel alone. No one can quite agree whether half these tales began with fear or with ale. The dog growls, the cart horses hesitate, then the figure moves, only slightly. Its head turns. The clerk's mare shies. You hear laughter from behind the trees. Young laughter. The truth becomes obvious. The figure is a scarecrow. Someone has dressed a wooden frame in an old cloak, stuffed the hood with straw, and painted a crude face onto a pale scrap of leather. Two village youths crouch behind a fallen trunk nearby. They have tied a cord to the scarecrow's head. When travellers approach, they pull. The head turns. Simple, effective, stupid. The youths tug again. The scarecrow jerks toward the road. The clerk's mare leaps sideways. One cart horse panics. Its companion follows. The merchant grabs the reins. Easy. Too late. The cart lurches. One wheel drops into a deep rut hidden beneath wet leaves. Wood cracks, not loudly, just one sharp sound. The cart tilts. A bundle of wool slides toward the edge. You grab it with both hands. Another traveller catches a basket before it falls. The frightened horses pull forward. The damaged wheel twists. Then the axle settles crookedly into the mud. Everything stops. Silence returns to the forest. The scarecrow continues staring at you. It now seems smug. The two village youths are no longer laughing. They step slowly from behind the tree. One removes his cap. The merchant looks at the wheel, then at them, then back at the wheel. This is becoming a familiar ritual, a harmless joke, a brief fright, a little laughter. Then someone begins calculating the cost. The wheel has not completely shattered, but one spoke is broken and the rim has split near the rut. A cartwheel is not a trivial object. Good wheels require carefully shaped, timber-fitted joints, an experienced wheelwright, and often an iron tire heated and shrunk around the wooden rim. On a forest road, none of those things are conveniently available. The merchant kneels in the mud. He runs one hand over the damage, then he sighs. This is somehow worse than shouting. The young pranksters explain that they have frightened travellers before. Usually people curse. Sometimes someone throws a stone. Once they claim a monk ran nearly 50 paces before realizing what he had seen. They considered that a great success, until now. The clerk's mare continues trembling. The dog walks to the scarecrow and urinates on its wooden base. At least one member of the company has expressed a clear opinion. The retainers remove the fake figure. Its body is little more than crossed sticks wrapped in straw. Inside the hood hangs a small dried bundle of rowan twigs. One youth says his grandmother told him rowan keeps away witches and wandering spirits. You look at the frightening artificial corpse beside the road. The charm does seem slightly confused about its responsibilities. Those who tell such tales never fully agree. Whether the youths built the scarecrow only as a prank, or whether it began as some older roadside custom adapted for amusement, in villages beliefs shift easily. A protective bundle becomes decoration. A harvest figure becomes a joke. A warning becomes entertainment. What matters now is the wheel. The company unloads part of the cart. You carry 2 wool bundles beneath an oak, while the merchant and retainers lift the axle. A length of rope is wound around the damaged rim. A piece of straight timber is cut and bound alongside the broken spoke. It is not a proper repair. It only needs to hold until the next settlement. Cold rain begins while you work, naturally. It drips from your hood. Mud reaches your knees. The dog shelters beneath the cart. The 2 pranksters help silently. One gathers stones to support the axle. The other carries bundles away from the wet road. Nobody orders them to leave. This may be punishment enough. Nearly an hour passes, then another. At last the cart lowers onto its repaired wheel. The merchant pushes against it. The wheel turns, slowly, awkwardly. But it turns. The company reloads the goods. The rain becomes steadier. The youths remove the scarecrow completely and drag it deeper into the woods. You suspect no traveller will meet it again. When the cart finally begins moving, the wheel makes a new sound. Creak, knock, creak, knock. Every rotation reminds you of the morning's joke. You continue along the forest road at walking pace. Behind the oak stands empty. Ahead, through the rain, the track descends toward a distant river valley. And as wet branches close around the company once more, you find yourself thinking that the most dangerous creature in the medieval forest may not be wolf outlaw, ghost, or wandering spirit. It may simply be 2 bored villagers with rope. The damaged cartwheel announces your approach to the river long before you see the water. Creak, knock, creak, knock. The sound follows you down through the dripping woodland until the trees begin to thin, and the road spreads into a broad, muddy track. Rain has weakened into mist, but every cloak in the company is wet, every boot carries half the road upon it, and the dog looks as though he has been rolled carefully through a ditch. Ahead, grey water moves between low banks. The river is wider than you expected. Not enormous, but broad enough that nobody simply rolls up a tunic and walks across, unless he has developed a sudden dislike for living. A ferry operates here. There is no stone bridge, only a heavy, flat-bottomed boat tied to a timber landing. A thick rope runs across the current, fixed between posts on either bank, so the ferryman can guide the vessel without being swept downstream. Several travellers already wait. 2 pilgrims huddle beneath cloaks. A wool merchant stands beside a pack-horse. 3 women carry baskets covered with linen. There are also 6 sheep, 1 donkey, and a goose secured beneath somebody's arm. The goose appears to object to river transport in principle. You join the line, then you notice something strange. Nobody is crossing. The ferry remains tied to the landing. The ferryman is nowhere to be seen. A merchant knocks on the door of a small timber hut beside the bank. No answer. He knocks again. From inside comes a furious voice. Go away. Everyone exchanges glances. The merchant tries once more. We need the ferry, I know. Then come out. No! This is unusual customer service even by medieval standards. The door opens perhaps the width of 2 fingers. An eye appears, then it closes again. You wait. Cold mist drifts over the water. The dog sniffs around the hut. Finally, an elderly woman carrying onions explains. Several local youths visited before dawn. They sometimes help around the landing, gathering ropes, loading sacks, or tending the ferryman's little fire. This morning they decided to play a joke. While the ferryman was washing at the river edge, they stole his breeches. Not all his clothing, only the part most necessary for maintaining dignity in public. They also hid one of his boots, and because restraint apparently died several miles back on the road, they removed the ferry pole and carried it somewhere into the reeds. The plan presumably was to make the ferryman chase them. He refused. Now everyone waits. Medieval clothing may look simple from a distance, but modesty is no small matter. Men commonly wear linen brays beneath hose, while outer garments vary with occupation, region, wealth, and season. Appearing improperly dressed before a crowd can be humiliating, especially for a man whose workplace is precisely where the crowd is standing. Some swear that exposing a person's clothing or hiding garments is an old form of rough village humor. Others insist it is simply what happens when young people discover that someone has left laundry unattended. No one can quite agree whether tradition improves the joke. The ferryman clearly thinks not. The wool merchant becomes impatient. He has goods to move. The pilgrims want to reach a priory before dark. Your own company has a wounded cartwheel that should not spend another night in wet mud. So the search begins. One man checks behind the hut. A pilgrim searches beneath the landing. The onion woman peers into a stack of firewood. You follow the dog into the reeds. His nose works close to the ground. There are footprints everywhere, bare feet, boot prints, sheep tracks, cart ruts. One small footprint ends beside the river, though you suspect it belongs to someone collecting water earlier. The dog suddenly dives into a patch of sedge. He emerges carrying cloth, brown wool. Everyone looks. The ferryman's breeches. One leg is soaked, the other is decorated with mud. The dog is delighted. The ferryman is not. He opens the door slightly wider and orders you to put them on a post. You do. The door closes. Several minutes pass. Then the ferryman emerges wearing the recovered garment beneath a long tunic and only one boot. He has a beard like wet straw and a face carved by years of weather. His expression promises consequences. The missing boot is found inside an empty grain barrel. The youths have packed it with pebbles. The ferryman empties it slowly. Nobody laughs. The ferry pole takes longer. Without it, crossing is still possible using the guide rope, but maneuvering animals and carts becomes difficult. The current is stronger near the middle, and the ferryman does not intend to risk horses while missing equipment. The company spreads along the bank. You search beneath willow branches. The dog searches for things unrelated to the task. One of the pilgrims pauses at a small roadside shrine dedicated to Saint Christopher, often invoked by travellers. A worn image shows the saint carrying the Christ child across water. Someone has left a coin there. Another person has tucked dried fennel beside it. Travel charms and prayers seem especially sensible while standing beside a ferry operated by a man who has spent the morning looking for his trousers. At last, one of the women finds the pole. It has been pushed through the branches of a willow nearly 10 feet above the ground. How the pranksters lifted it there is unclear. Getting it down takes 4 adults, a rope, and language the pilgrim politely pretends not to hear. The pole falls. It lands in mud. A sheet of brown water splashes over the wool merchant. He closes his eyes. You have now seen that expression several times on this journey. It means a person is reconsidering every decision that brought him here. At last, the ferry is ready. The animals go first. Sheep crowd onto the boat while the ferryman steadies the rope. The donkey refuses, then suddenly boards with such enthusiasm that 2 pilgrims nearly fall into the water. The goose resumes its protest. Your cart follows on the second crossing. The repaired wheel groans as it rolls onto the planks. Everyone holds their breath. The boat dips. Water slaps softly against the hull. The ferryman works the rope hand over hand, guiding you into the current. For a few quiet moments the morning's foolishness fades. Mist hangs above the river. Bare trees reflect in broken grey shapes. A bell sounds faintly from somewhere beyond the opposite bank. You look back. On the near shore 3 young figures have appeared at the edge of the reeds. The pranksters. The ferryman sees them too. He says nothing. He simply points toward the pile of wet ropes, muddy landing boards, and animal dung waiting beside the hut. The boys understand. By evening you suspect the ferry will be the cleanest crossing in the county. When the boat reaches the far bank, the dog jumps ashore first. Your cart follows carefully. The repaired wheel survives. You pull your cloak tighter and continue toward higher ground. Behind you, the ferry creaks back across the grey water, and the ferryman, now wearing both boots and every necessary garment, stands at the stern with the solemn dignity of a man who has learned that sometimes the greatest obstacle to medieval travel is not flood storm or broken bridge. Sometimes it is simply somebody hiding your trousers. Beyond the river, the road rises gently toward a cluster of cottages gathered around a small stone church. The rain has finally stopped. Water still shines on hedges and drips from bare branches, but a thin band of pale light appears low in the western sky. Smoke rises almost straight from cottage roofs. Somewhere ahead a hammer strikes wood in a steady rhythm. Then you hear music. Not much music. A pipe, a drum. Several voices attempting the same song with varying levels of commitment. The dog lifts his head. You follow the sound. The village square is crowded. Bundles of evergreen have been tied above doorways. A strip of coloured cloth hangs from the church porch. Two long boards rest across barrels to make rough tables, and servants carry baskets of bread toward them. A wedding is underway. You could continue walking. Instead, you smell roasted onions. This decides the matter. Travellers are often drawn into village celebrations, especially when food remains, and nobody asks too many questions. You stand near the edge of the gathering while a woman hands you a piece of coarse bread topped with soft cheese. The dog receives something from someone else. His social skills remain superior to yours. The bride and groom have already left the church. The bride wears her best wool gown beneath a cloak lined with rabbit fur. The groom looks uncomfortable in freshly brushed clothing and seems unsure what to do with his hands. Their families surround them. Everyone is smiling, mostly. Marriage celebrations can involve a mixture of church ritual, household custom, feasting gifts, songs, and practical jokes. Friends may hide belongings, tease the newly married couple, block doorways, demand small payments, or invent games meant to embarrass them gently. Some customs are affectionate, some are less gentle, and some depend entirely on whether both families possess the same idea of humour. That last detail becomes important. Near one cottage, several young men are whispering around a pair of shoes. You recognize one of them, not personally, spiritually. He has the same expression worn by the antlered servant, the bell-ringing novice, the flower ghost, the stable hands, the pig decorators, Martin Hugh, and the forest youths. You have travelled far enough to identify disaster before it introduces itself. The shoes belong to the groom. He removed them earlier because one sole had split and a cobbler relative offered to bind it temporarily. The young men steal them, harmless enough perhaps. They hide one inside a grain chest, the other goes beneath an overturned basket. Then someone suggests locking the door of the cottage where the couple is expected to eat privately later. Another produces an iron key. You sigh. The joke expands. It always expands. A third youth switches two drinking cups, prepared for the couple. One contains warmed spiced ale. The other contains a sharply flavoured herbal mixture meant as a digestive remedy for the groom's elderly uncle. The mixture smells of wormwood. Wormwood is used in various remedies and preparations, although no one at this wedding appears interested in medical accuracy. Some swear bitter herbs strengthen the stomach, others use them against worms, fevers, or vague internal complaints that medieval healers classify with impressive confidence. Tonight, the only certain effect will be surprise. The feast begins. You sit near the lower end of one long table. Wooden trenchers hold roasted roots, pottage onions, bits of pork and bread softened with gravy. Ale moves in shared jugs. A fiddler joins the pipe player. The mood is warm. Then the groom looks for his shoes. They are gone. Laughter begins. He laughs, too. Good. The first prank lands safely. A cousin eventually tells him where one shoe is hidden. Nobody reveals the second the groom continues barefoot, still harmless. Then the bride tries to enter the cottage. The door is locked. More laughter. She smiles. Her father does not. He is a broad man with grey in his beard and a fur-lined cloak that suggests modest prosperity. The groom's brother waves the iron key. The bride's father holds out his hand. The brother hides the key behind his back. This is the first moment when the evening changes. The groom tells him to stop. He does not. Someone cheers. The bride's uncle steps forward. The groom's uncle steps between them. Voices rise. The key is tossed from one young man to another. It falls. The dog sees it hit the ground. Of course he does. He grabs it. For one breathtaking second nobody moves. Then the dog runs. You close your eyes. The village erupts. 3 youths chase him. The groom follows. A childless old widow standing beside the church laughs so hard she has to hold the wall. The dog races around the feast table's iron key, clattering between his teeth. He ducks beneath a bench. A man trips over it. A bowl of onions overturns. The dog emerges on the other side. The groom's father shouts. The bride's father shouts louder. Someone finally corners the animal beside a woodpile. The dog drops the key. Unfortunately, it drops between 2 stacked logs. Young man reaches in. The logs shift. Half the pile collapses. Nobody is badly hurt, but one ankle is bruised. Several pieces of firewood roll into the mud and the laughter thins. Eventually the key is recovered. The cottage door opens. You expect the situation to settle. Then someone brings the drinking cups. The groom takes the wrong one. He drinks. He stops. His face tightens. The crowd waits. He swallows bravely. The bitter wormwood mixture appears to travel directly into his soul. The bride laughs. This would have ended well if the elderly uncle had not taken the other cup. His medicinal drink is missing, he complains. Someone explains. He complains more. Then the bride's mother accuses the groom's cousins of mocking her family's hospitality. One cousin insists it was only a joke. The bride's uncle says hiding shoes is a joke. Locking doors is foolishness. Swapping remedies is disrespect. The groom's brother responds badly. Soon both families are speaking over one another. The fiddler stops playing. That is how you know the wedding is in trouble. No one can quite agree whether the quarrel begins with the locked door, the lost key, the medicinal ale, or some older disagreement that has been waiting years for an excuse. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Medieval family alliances carry weight. Marriage can involve property inheritance, labor, dowries, obligations, and local reputation. A joke that makes one household feel insulted can awaken grievances far older than the newlyweds. The village priest finally intervenes. He stands between the families with the tired authority of a man who has probably prevented this exact kind of argument before. The groom apologizes. Then his brother does, less gracefully. The bride's father accepts. Eventually, the second shoe is found beneath the basket. The woodpile is restacked. The elderly uncle receives a fresh herbal drink and guards it personally. Music resumes. Slowly, you remain long enough to see the bride and groom finally share bread at the table without further interference. The dog lies beneath your bench asleep beside the recovered iron key until someone wisely removes it from his reach. Outside, dusk gathers around the cottages. Lanterns glow beneath the church wall. The wedding continues quieter now. And as you pull your cloak around your shoulders, you understand that medieval marriage may survive poverty, winter bad harvests, and difficult relatives. But first, it must survive the groom's friends. You leave the wedding village after sunset, carrying the smell of wood smoke and roasted onions with you into the dark. The road climbs steadily. Behind the last notes of pipe music become faint, then disappear beneath the winter wind. Ahead, the land rises toward a ridge where the black outline of a castle stands against the cloudy sky. Torches burn beside its gate. Even from a distance, the place feels different from the manor you visited earlier. This is a true fortified residence. A stone curtain wall follows the ridge. Towers rise at intervals. The keep stands beyond them, square and heavy, its upper windows glowing faintly. A ditch runs along the outer approach, crossed by a timber bridge whose planks knock beneath your boots. The dog walks close to you now. Perhaps even he understands that castles are places where one should avoid stealing keys. At the gate, guards inspect travellers beneath torchlight. Your cloak is examined, your small bundle is checked. The dog receives a suspicious look. He responds by sitting. Apparently, innocence can be performed. Inside the courtyard, smells of wet stone horses smoke leather and dung. Grooms carry lanterns between the stables. A servant rolls a barrel toward the kitchen. Somewhere above, a black shape moves along the wall walk. You have arrived on a feast night. Not a great holy festival, merely a gathering of local knights, household officers, visiting clergy, and several neighbouring landholders. Enough people to fill the hall with noise. A steward directs you toward the lower tables. The great hall is warmer than the courtyard, but only just. Two large hearths burn along the walls. Beeswax candles illuminate the high table, while cheaper tallow lights flicker farther down. Tapestries hang over stone to soften draughts, though cold air still finds every gap. With remarkable skill, rushes cover the floor. Someone has scattered dried mint among them. The scent rises beneath passing boots. Servants bring trenchers, roasted capon, thick pottage, smoked fish, and dark bread. You settle near a pillar. The dog disappears beneath the table. Then a man wearing bells on his hood enters the hall. The jester. He is older than you expect, perhaps 40. His face is narrow and clever, and his patched clothing is deliberately bright in a room dominated by dark winter wool. A carved wooden bauble hangs from one hand. The hall quiets slightly. A professional fool occupies a curious place in noble households. He may entertain with songs, mimicry, riddles, acrobatics, insults, and exaggerated foolishness. In theory, the fool can say things others cannot. In practice, this freedom has boundaries. The dangerous part is discovering where those boundaries are. Tonight the fool begins carefully. He mocks the steward's habit of counting cups. The steward laughs. He imitates a knight who always complains about cold weather. The knight laughs too. He pretends to inspect the Lord's roast bird as though it were a sick patient. Even the priest smiles. The room relaxes. Ale flows. People grow warmer. And confidence, as you have learned repeatedly on this journey, is often the beginning of trouble. The jester moves closer to the high table. He points his bauble toward a visiting knight wearing an expensive scarlet mantle. The knight is broad, clean-shaven, and clearly proud of both his clothing and his position. The fool comments on the mantle, laughter. Then the knight's boots, more laughter. Then his hunting skill. The knight smiles. Barely. The fool notices. He should stop. You see it immediately. The jester sees it too. But the hall is laughing, and laughter can be as tempting as ale. He continues. He makes a joke about the knight returning from a hunt with no stag, no boar, and enough excuses to fill a cart. The lower tables erupt. The knight's smile vanishes. The Lord watches carefully. The fool changes direction, almost. Then someone near the hearth calls for another. The jester turns back. He exaggerates the knight's walk. He pretends to limp beneath the weight of an imaginary purse. The meaning is unclear, but the suggestion may concern greed. That is worse. Honor matters greatly among nobles. So does reputation. A jest about bad hunting may be tolerated. A public suggestion of cowardice, dishonesty, or weakness can touch something far more dangerous. No one can quite agree whether the fool means to accuse the knight of greed or merely mocks the size of his purse. Those who later tell the tale never fully agree. The knight rises. The hall becomes quiet. The jester lowers his bauble. For a moment the fool and knight stand facing one another across the table. The hearth crackles. Someone sets down a cup very carefully. Then the knight reaches out and snatches the jester's cap. The bells ring softly. A few people laugh nervously. The fool bows. Perhaps he thinks the danger has passed. Then he says one final line. You do not catch every word, only enough to understand that it concerns the knight looking wiser while wearing the fool's cap. Silence. Complete silence. The Lord closes his eyes for half a heartbeat. The knight throws the cap into the rushes. His hand goes to his belt, not to draw a sword, but close enough that several retainers rise. The fool steps backward. The Lord speaks. One word. That is enough. The retainers stop. The knight removes his hand. The jester bows again, lower this time. He is ordered away from the hall. Not imprisoned, not beaten, simply removed before the situation becomes something nobody can undo. That may be mercy. It may also be excellent household management. You watch the fool leave through a side passage without his cap. His bells remain silent on the floor. The feast resumes slowly. The knight sits. He drinks. Nobody makes another joke about him, not even accidentally. Later, a servant retrieves the jester's cap and carries it away. You ask an old clerk whether fools often get into such trouble. He shrugs. Some, he says, are beloved for speaking truths wrapped in laughter. Others discover that privilege is not protection. There are stories of fools rewarded with clothing, coins, even influence. There are also stories of entertainers dismissed, punished, or driven away for offending the wrong person. Even now it is hard to tell where history ends and cautionary tale begins. Near the hearth, an elderly servant hangs a small charm of knotted thread beside a doorway. She tells another woman it keeps quarrels from entering a room. You look back toward the high table. The charm appears to have arrived late. As the feast winds down, you find a place along the wall beneath a wool blanket. The dog curls against your boots. The half-burned candles grow shorter. Across the hall, the visiting knight sits alone for a while, staring into his cup. Somewhere beyond the side passage, the jester is presumably reconsidering the precise market value of one additional laugh. And you begin to understand that in a medieval castle, humour may travel upward toward power only so far before it meets a locked door. The castle settles reluctantly after the feast. For a long while footsteps continue through the passages above you. Servants carry cups toward the buttery. Someone drags a bench across stone. A door closes somewhere beyond the hall, followed by the metallic scrape of an iron key turning in its lock. The last beeswax candles burn low. You lie beneath your wool blanket near the wall, listening to the hearth crack softly as its logs collapse into embers. The dog is curled against your boots. He has survived markets, ferries, weddings, false alarms, and questionable relics, and now sleeps with the peaceful confidence of an animal that has contributed to several of those problems. You are almost asleep when a chamber servant touches your shoulder. The lower hall, he explains, must be cleared before dawn. Several travellers are being moved into a secondary sleeping chamber higher in the keep. You pull your cloak around yourself and follow. The staircase is narrow and cold. Torchlight bends over worn stone. Your hand brushes the wall as you climb, and you feel moisture beneath your fingertips where winter damp has crept into the masonry. Bedrooms in a castle are not necessarily warm retreats. Even noble chambers can be draughty. Heavy bed curtains help trap body heat. Wool blankets, fur coverlets, feather mattresses, and heated stones or warming pans may soften winter nights, but stone walls remain stone walls. The richer you are, perhaps the more impressive the furniture surrounding your cold feet. At the upper landing, a servant leads you through an oak door. Several beds stand along the chamber walls. One belongs to a visiting nobleman named Sir Robert, who has apparently spent much of the evening boasting about how deeply he sleeps. This information has reached 3 young household servants. That is unfortunate. You notice them near his bed. One holds a coil of rope. Another carries folded blankets. The third is examining the wooden frame. You stop. Surely not again. The servants whisper. The plan, when pieced together from gestures and suppressed laughter, is simple enough. Sir Robert's mattress rests upon cords stretched across a heavy timber frame. The servants intend to loosen several cords beneath it, then arrange the bedding carefully so everything appears normal. When Sir Robert climbs into bed, the mattress will sag. He will sink unexpectedly towards the floor. Everyone will laugh. No harm intended. You have heard that phrase many times now without once seeing it improve the outcome. Rope-supported beds are common enough. Instead of modern springs, mattresses may rest on a web of cords or leather straps that require tightening. A loose bed can sag badly, which is one possible source behind old associations between sleeping comfort and tightly secured bed ropes. Tonight, however, the frame itself is old. One corner post shows a dark split running along the grain. You notice it. The servants do not. They loosen 2 cords, then another. One of them pulls harder. The frame gives a faint creak. He freezes. Nothing happens. They continue. Sir Robert arrives before they finish. The servants leap away. One begins pretending to straighten a blanket. Another becomes deeply interested in a candle. Sir Robert enters, wearing a long sleeping shirt beneath his fur-lined robe. He yawns. A servant removes his boots. The bed curtains are drawn partly aside. You settle onto a pallet across the room, unable to decide whether to warn him. Then Sir Robert sits. The mattress sinks. His eyes widen. The pranksters bite their lips. For one brief moment everything goes exactly as planned. Then the weakened corner post cracks. The sound is sharp. Wood snaps. The bed tilts. Sir Robert slides sideways. One curtain pole comes loose. The heavy curtain falls over him. The opposite side of the bed lifts. A small table beside it is struck by the frame. The table overturns. A bronze candlestick rolls across the floor. Someone shouts. You move immediately toward the candle. Its flame is still burning. It has landed against the edge of the rushes. You stamp it out beneath your boot. Smoke curls upward. The room goes dark except for one wall lamp. Under the fallen curtains, Sir Robert begins shouting, not in pain, mostly in outrage. The dog wakes and barks. Naturally, servants rush in from the passage. One carries a lantern, another carries a bucket of water. For the 3rd time on your journey, someone arrives with a bucket after the danger has mostly passed. This may be the true foundation of medieval emergency response. The curtain is pulled away. Sir Robert emerges. His hair stands sideways. A blanket is wrapped around one shoulder. He looks like an angry saint in a poorly funded miracle play. The young pranksters are no longer laughing. The chamber steward arrives. He examines the broken frame. then the loosened cords, then the servants. Silence. Sir Robert demands an explanation. The first servant admits everything. The joke, the loosened bed ropes, the expectation that the mattress would sag only a little. Nobody intended the frame to break. Nobody intended the candle to fall. That final detail changes the room. Fire is feared everywhere, but inside a castle chamber filled with wool, hangings, straw-filled, mattresses, wooden furniture, dry rushes, chests, clothing, and candle flame, it can become terrifyingly dangerous. Stone walls do not burn. Almost everything inside them can. Some households keep buckets or leather fire vessels ready for emergencies. People may also cover hearths carefully before sleep and treat wandering candle flames with considerable caution. There are even folk beliefs that certain blessed candles can protect a household during storms or danger. No one suggests testing such beliefs tonight. The steward orders the servants to strip the broken bed apart. Sir Robert is given another chamber. Before leaving, he points towards the three pranksters and says something quiet. They lower their heads. No one can quite agree later whether they are fined, beaten, dismissed, or merely given weeks of unpleasant work. One version says they spend the next month hauling firewood. Another says they must repair every bed rope in the keep. The second version feels almost too perfect. You help carry the fallen curtain away from the extinguished candle. The scorched rushes smell bitter. Only a hand-sized patch has blackened, nothing more. That small mark holds everyone's attention. The joke has stopped being funny. Not because Sir Robert fell, not because the bed broke, but because for a few seconds one careless flame rested beside dry bedding while half the chamber was tangled in cloth. The servants spread fresh rushes over the blackened patch. A carpenter is summoned despite the late hour. He kneels beside the shattered bed frame, rubbing his tired eyes. He examines the split. Then he looks at the servants. His expression suggests that medieval craftsmen occasionally dream of a world without customers. Eventually the room quiets. You return to your pallet. The dog circles beside you. A new candle is placed inside a metal lantern rather than on the table. Nobody objects. Outside, winter wind brushes the shutters. You pull the blanket higher. The smell of damp stone slowly replaces the smell of scorched rushes. And somewhere down the passage, Sir Robert is almost certainly discovering that after a bed collapses beneath you, once every creak in the replacement becomes extremely interesting. Morning arrives with frost silvering the castle roofs and a thin skin of ice along the water troughs. You wake stiffly beneath your blanket. The chamber smells of cold stone, old wool, and the faint bitter trace of last night's scorched rushes. The broken bed has already been removed. Only a pale rectangle on the floor shows where it stood. The dog wakes before you, naturally. He stretches, shakes himself, and goes directly to the door, as though he has appointments. Below the castle is unusually busy. Servants carry bundles of brushwood through the courtyard. Stable boys drag split logs toward carts. Women From the kitchen prepare baskets of coarse bread, onions, cheese, and small meat pies. Something is happening beyond the walls, a seasonal gathering, you learn. The nearby villagers are preparing a winter bonfire on open ground below the castle ridge. Such fires can mark feast days, seasonal customs, local celebrations, or simply provide an excuse for people to gather when winter has made ordinary life particularly dull. The precise origin of tonight's fire is unclear. Some insist it honors a saint, others claim the custom is older than the chapel itself. No one can quite agree whether the church approves of every part of it. That usually means the interesting parts survived. By late afternoon you follow a stream of people through the gate. The dog comes too, of course. Outside the walls the air is sharp enough to sting your nose. A broad field slopes towards the village. At its centre stands a great pile of timber brush, old branches, broken fencing, and several dry barrels. Torchbearers wait around it. Children are absent from the rougher edge of the gathering, where young men have already begun drinking stronger ale than seems advisable. You remain near the safer side. Experience has improved your judgment. The fire is lit at dusk. Flame catches slowly at first. Then the dry brush ignites. Orange light rises into the evening. Smoke rolls low across the field. People move closer for warmth. Faces glow in the shifting light. Someone begins playing a pipe. Another beats a small drum. Women pass cups of warm ale flavored with spice. A man roasts chestnuts in a blackened pan. The dog positions himself near the food with impressive strategy. Around the fire people wear simple masks. Some are carved from thin wood, others are made from cloth straw or bits of animal hide. Disguising customs appear in many medieval festivities, especially during seasonal celebrations, when ordinary roles may briefly loosen. Men dress as beasts. Villagers imitate spirits. Young people blacken faces with soot or cover themselves in straw. Some say masks frighten away harmful forces. Others say they invite luck. A priest standing near the edge of the crowd appears to believe they mostly encourage nonsense. You suspect he is correct. 3 young men emerge wearing particularly elaborate disguises. One has a goat mask. Another wears a hood covered in feathers. The third has tied antlers to his cap. You stare at the antlers. Somewhere in your memory, a servant near a town gate begins howling. You immediately distrust the evening. The masked men carry a small, empty barrel. The plan becomes clear. Slowly, they intend to roll it down the slope toward a group of friends. Not into them, only near them. The barrel will rattle loudly in the dark. People will jump. The masked men will laugh. The barrel, they assure one another, is empty. This is apparently considered adequate safety planning. The goat-masked man pushes it. The barrel rolls. At first everything works. It bumps over frozen earth. People shout and leap aside. Laughter follows. The barrel stops harmlessly against a patch of grass. Encouraged, they retrieve it. The second attempt begins higher up the slope. This is worse. They push harder. The barrel accelerates. It strikes a stone. The direction changes. Now it is heading toward the bonfire. People notice. The feather-hooded man runs after it. He slips. The antlered man tries to catch the rim. He misses. The barrel reaches the outer ring of burning brush. For 1 second, it seems it will stop. Then it strikes a charred log. The log rolls free. Sparks rise. People scatter. A burning branch lands several paces from a pile of straw used earlier for masks and decorations. Someone shouts. The priest points. 2 villagers rush forward and kick the branch away. Another stamps on glowing straw. A woman throws a bucket of water over the edge of the patch. Steam rises. The dog retreats behind you. For once, he has made the correct decision before everyone else. The barrel lies beside the fire, scorched but intact. The crowd becomes quiet. The masked men stop laughing. Then another problem appears. A gust of wind lifts sparks from the bonfire toward a cart loaded with dry brush. Several men pull the cart backward immediately. One wheel sinks into soft ground. The cart tilts. Brush spills. Nothing catches. But the sight is enough. The castle steward, watching from nearby, orders the bonfire reduced. Men drag unburned timber away from the edges. Buckets are placed in a line. The gathering continues, but the mood has changed. This is the danger of fire. In a world built from timber, straw, wool, pitch-dry thatch and open flame. Every hearth is useful. Every torch is necessary. Every candle offers comfort, and every spark carries possibility. Some villagers believe throwing particular herbs into a seasonal fire protects cattle or homes from misfortune. Juniper is mentioned, so is rosemary. One old woman casts a small bundle of dried plants into the flames and whispers a prayer. Even now it is hard to tell whether such acts are devotion, habit, superstition, or simply something people have always done. The priest does not interfere. He seems more concerned with the barrels. The 3 pranksters are ordered to remove every remaining empty cask from the slope. They work without masks now. The goat face lies in the grass. The antlers are placed beside it. A nearby man picks them up, looks at the young offender, and says something that makes several people laugh softly. You do not catch the words, but the young man turns red. As darkness deepens, the celebration becomes calmer. People sing near the reduced fire. Arlay cups are filled more carefully. Chestnuts crack softly in the pan. You sit on an overturned log with your hands extended toward the warmth. The dog rests beneath your knees. Behind you, the castle walls glow faintly beneath torchlight. Beyond, the fire fields disappear into winter dark. The masks no longer seem threatening. They lie abandoned near baskets and cloaks. The dangerous barrel has been carried away. The priest finally accepts a cup of ale. Perhaps he has earned it. You listen to the slow murmur of voices. After days of bells, ghosts, pigs, ropes, false alarms, broken wheels, missing clothes, weddings, jesters, and collapsing beds, the bonfire feels almost peaceful now. Almost. A spark rises into the black sky. Everyone watches it fade, and you find yourself thinking that medieval celebrations do not always need monsters, curses, or angry spirits to become dangerous. Sometimes all they need is ale, dry straw, an open flame, and one person saying this will be funny. The bonfire sinks lower as the night grows colder. What was once a roaring tower of flame has become a broad red heart of embers surrounded by blackened logs. People begin drifting back toward the village and castle in small groups carrying lanterns that sway over the frost. You remain near the fire a little longer. The dog sleeps beneath your cloak. He has finally reached the point where even roasted meat cannot persuade him to move. Around you, the last servants gather cups and baskets. 2 villagers spread earth over the places where sparks landed earlier. The 3 young men responsible for the rolling barrel carry bundles of unused brush away from the slope under the watchful eye of the steward. Nobody is laughing at them now. Yet nobody seems particularly angry either. The danger has passed. That changes things. One of the pranksters eventually sits near the embers and holds his hands toward the heat. His antlered cap lies beside him. You glance at it. The journey has almost formed a circle. Only a few nights ago outside a town gate, another pair of antlers turned a foolish disguise into an alarm. Since then, you have watched one small joke after another grow legs of its own. A bell rung once becomes an alarm across the countryside. A flower-covered ghost becomes panic on a staircase. A loose stool becomes broken pottery. A decorated pig becomes a market dispute. A hidden relic becomes a spiritual crisis. A cord beneath a bench humiliates the wrong nobleman. A horn sends an entire household running into the cold. A scarecrow breaks a cartwheel. Missing trousers stop a ferry. A wedding key disappears into a woodpile. A fool discovers that laughter has borders. A bed prank nearly puts flame to dry rushes, and now an empty barrel has sent fire rolling toward straw. None begins as wickedness. That may be the strangest part. Most begin with boredom, with ale, with friendship, with the desire to embarrass somebody for half a minute and tell the story afterward. The Middle Ages do not lack humour. People tease one another, mock their neighbours, invent ridiculous disguises, play rough games, compose rude songs, exchange riddles, and laugh at physical mishaps just as people always have. But the world around them is less forgiving. A horse frightened suddenly can overturn a cart. A single candle can threaten a timber room. A false bell can empty cottages. A damaged tool may mean days of lost work. A public insult can wound honour in a society where reputation carries real weight. Even now it is hard to tell whether many old stories of disastrous pranks record exact events or whether storytellers sharpen them over generations. A broken stool becomes a collapsed table. A frightened horse becomes a stampede. One escaped pig becomes 20. That is what stories do. They grow around the fire. They become funnier after danger is safely gone. You rise when the castle bell sounds. The note rolls over the dark field. Not an alarm this time, only the hour. You smile at the difference. The dog wakes reluctantly. Together you follow the road uphill. Frost crunches beneath your boots. The cold has hardened yesterday's mud, leaving the wheel ruts frozen like dark scars across the track. Near the gate, 2 watchmen stand beside a brazier. They recognize you from the feast and allow you through. One pokes the charcoal with an iron rod. Sparks rise. You warm your hands beside them. Beyond the walls, the courtyard has gone quiet. The stable horses shift beneath blankets. A servant carries the last kitchen bucket across the stones. Near the chapel, a monk or priest moves beneath a hood, his small lantern throwing a circle of yellow light around his feet. The dog follows you toward the gatehouse fire. You sit on a wooden bench. This one does not collapse. You test it anyway. A watchman notices. He says nothing. Perhaps that is kindness. The hours before dawn pass slowly. You share coarse bread with the guards and dip pieces into warm ale. One man tells you that his grandmother used to place iron near the threshold to discourage troublesome spirits. Another says his own mother preferred a sprig of rowan. The older watchman shrugs and says a strong oak door works better. No one can quite agree whether he is joking. Above you, the castle wall becomes a dark line against a sky slowly losing its stars. A bell sounds far away, perhaps from the monastery you passed days ago. For an instant, you remember those sleepy novices beneath the bell rope and the old monk who slept through their entire disaster. You wonder whether he is sleeping now. Probably. Some people possess gifts beyond explanation. The watchfire sinks, nobody adds another log. Morning is close enough, and the world you have travelled through begins to feel strangely gentle again. The jokes have finished, the shouting has faded, the frightened horses are calm, the relic is safe, the ferry works. The wedding continues somewhere behind you, in memory its quarrel already becoming a family tale. Even the flower will eventually vanish from the monastery stairs. That is the quiet mercy of ordinary life. Disaster arrives loudly, routine returns softly. And now, as the last watchfire dims, you allow yourself to become still. The road no longer asks anything from you. The castle stones hold their silence. Beyond the gate, frost rests over the fields, pale beneath the earliest suggestion of dawn. You hear the slow breathing of horses in the stable and the softer breathing of the dog beside your feet. Somewhere in the chapel a candle burns behind thick glass, its flame barely moving. Your hands are warm beneath your cloak now. Your boots can remain muddy until morning. Nothing needs to be repaired tonight. No cartwheel waits for rope. No alarm horn sounds above the wall. No prankster hides behind a barrel. There is only the steady quiet of a medieval night coming gently to its end. You lean back against the old oak wall. The wood is smooth where countless shoulders have rested before yours. Perhaps guards have sat here through hundreds of winter mornings listening for danger and finding only wind. Perhaps travellers have closed their eyes in this same corner after roads much longer than yours. The thought is comforting. You breathe slowly. The watchman beside you pulls his fur-lined cloak tighter and watches the pale horizon without speaking. The dog gives a small sigh. The final ember in the brazier settles inward. Soon the monastery bells will call brothers from sleep. Soon kitchen fires will be stirred awake. Soon carts will begin creaking along frozen roads. Merchants will raise shutters, and another ordinary medieval day will gather itself beneath the winter sky. But you do not need to follow it, not tonight. For now the roads may remain empty. The markets may stay silent, the castle doors may remain closed. Let the bells sound far away. Let the river mist drift unseen beneath the trees. Let every candle burn lower until only a soft, golden point remains. And as the old stone walls fade into darkness around you, allow the long road, the laughter, the foolishness, and every strange little disaster to drift away as well. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing is waiting at the gate. There is only warmth, quiet, and the slow, deep stillness before morning. Rest here for a while. The fire is almost gone. The night is peaceful, and the medieval world at last is asleep.